and welcome back to the Entrepreneurial Clinician Podcast Season 4. Today's episode is going to be for anyone who has anything to do with health. I'm going to be quite broad about that because if you're an allied health professional, you're going to need to know about the information contained in this podcast. If you manage allied health professionals, you're going to need to know about the information contained in this podcast. If you're an allied health business owner, you have legal reasons to know what's going on in this podcast today. No pressure at all, Kyra, at all. He's just sitting there going, what the hell has she just done? So how this has come about for me in Australia over the last couple of years, we've had some legislation come through which talks about the psychosocial risk assessment in workplaces. And allied health professionals, for some reason, are supposed to be the experts in being able to go and assess the psychosocial risk in workplaces. What we haven't been doing is actually acknowledging, assessing, and managing the risks in our own work. So I've asked Kaya Kocheka, please tell me I got that right.
Kocheka.
Okay, I'll get him to explain his name again in a minute. To come on today to talk about this very, very specific but very important way of exploring our work. So before we get on, I'm going to acknowledge the Darug people of the land in which I find myself coming to you from today in the greater west of Sydney. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. And I just want to say a really big thank you for the care that you have taken for this land that I get to live on and for allowing me to be here and call it my home. Beautiful. So welcome, Kaya. Can you please explain who you are? Give me a pronunciation lesson on your name and help me understand how we're going to get through this podcast episode today.
Thank you. Thank you for the warm welcome, Jo. And that's a beautiful way to acknowledge the country in which you reside and the lands you operate on. Mm-hmm. And it's a very purposeful way of introducing yourself in a very respectful way. So my name is Kayur Kocheka.
We did practice beforehand too, which makes it even worse for me.
It's interesting, actually. The name won't go into it too much, but being born and raised in the United Kingdom, my mum and dad actually spelt my name in a way that would be easily pronounced in the UK.
Oops.
And I guess over the years, I've had my name pronounced in multiple ways. And up until very recently, I have been saying my name in the way my parents say it. But prior to that, very accepting of how the name had been said. So it's Kayur, which is a bit of a challenging one because we have to roll the R at the end. So it's Kayur Kocheka.
Yeah, and I've got no rolling of the R capabilities at all. I tried to learn Danish for a while, and that was just horrendous for the Danes. Well, welcome to the podcast. Now, you're not talking to us from the United Kingdom today, though, are you? Where are you? Where are you talking to me from?
I'm currently based on the Sunshine Coast.
Yeah. So all the Australians just went, oh, of course you are. So what's your background? I mean, you're an allied health professional, but what's your background?
Are you speaking culturally?
Okay. No, I was speaking in terms of discipline, but we can go into culture if you like.
Yeah, no. So, I mean, I'm of Indian heritage. My parents were born and raised in Southeast Africa and migrated to India and then across the pond to the United Kingdom in the 80s. Mm-hmm. I'm actually a human biology by graduate. That was the discipline I went down first, partly because I didn't get the grades to study physiotherapy. I was told I didn't have the grades to study physiotherapy at university at graduate level. And then I went on to do a postgraduate master's degree in physiotherapy at the University of Birmingham in the United Kingdom, and I have a heap of other hats and egos, alter egos. I'm also a mindful yoga teacher. Also love a bit of photography, and yeah, so multidisciplinary, I would say, in its truest sense. So that's who I am, Jo.
Nice. I hadn't made the Africa, India, Great Britain, Australia connection before. Like that's that's the joy of being in Australia, is that we have so many people who have come from, you know, quite diverse parts of the world. My cultural background, in case nobody's heard this story before, is my family came out with the convicts. So some people find that story hilarious. I was ashamed of it for a very long time, but you know what? It's a part of the land in which I live. Yeah, great big melting pot.
Yeah, an interesting label.
Yes, very interesting label. Yes, but we didn't decide to go back to Great Britain either. Our family stayed, so here we are, many generations on.
Not a bad choice.
No, not at all. Not at all. So we're going to be talking about psychosocial demands today, but and in the context of our work. So it's kind of a really big discussion, but it's a really important discussion. But before we get into some of that, I'd like to ask you the question: have you ever gone through a period of your work life where you thought you were burning out or you had burnt out? Can you give us a little bit of insight into what that was like for you, and maybe how you pulled yourself out of it or recovered from it?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been contemplating on that question. And the word burnout. I'm not sure if that word resonates with me, and something I've probably particularly experienced. Maybe I see it as or periods of, certainly felt this periods of my life, work life, where I've experienced an inner conflict.
Yeah.
This dis-ease, this discomfort, this feeling of, this doesn't feel right. Why am I feeling this way? I'm in, and with, why am I feeling this way? Is it work? Is it my family life? Is it the things I'm pursuing outside of the workplace? What's causing me to feel this ease and this ease, this discomfort, this inner conflict, which which may be considered as which perhaps is being used as the term burnout at this present time. It's a bit of a buzzword, I think.
Good point. Good point.
So I wonder whether what we mean by burnout is this inner conflict. And absolutely have periods of times where I do experience this inner conflict, this discomfort, this feeling of being eaten up inside.
Wow.
And I think over the years I've got better and better and more self-aware at recognizing when that's happening. But my first experiences of that probably was, I first experienced that feeling of being burnt out inside in my late 20s. Kind of recognized, this doesn't feel, this is not how life should feel like. And what's, the steps, what steps did I take? It was, I don't know, something occurred where I realized I had to take a long look at myself inside. And I think the first opportunity I got to kind of experience that inner journey, it was at the end of a yoga class.
Wow. Okay.
Where I felt this serene state of bliss. I felt
Mm.
this silencing of the mind, the quietening of the mind, which I think contributed to that inner conflict,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
the fluctuating mind, the battles, the the conversations with myself, the
mm,
conversations with my personal systems of values, the
mm.
conversations I had with myself, what are my ethics, what are my morals. I think burnout, in a sense, is a conflict or a way of operating against those systems of values that we have, those core ethics we have that are often
Yes.
brought onto us by the external world. But it was at the
Mm,
end of a yoga class where I truly realized what I valued in life,
mm,
what my ethics were.
mhm, mhm.
And from that point onwards, the kind of the powerful experience I had at the end of a yoga class, at the end of a vigorous kind of session of moving the body with the breath, and what that
Mm,
culminated at the end
mm,
kind of got me on that journey of, if I can bring my mind to this state of peace and silence just through this exercise or this form,
mhm.
um, maybe I will be in a better space to learn and listen to myself and yeah, I guess understand what's making me feel uneasy.
Yeah.
And you need an environment in which you can contemplate that
Yes.
state of disease, that state of inner conflict.
Yeah.
You need moments of silence and tranquility when you're feeling burnt out and
Mm,
restless, and
mm.
when you're feeling you need to escape the world. So
Yeah.
yoga, and that was the first accidental step I took to overcome it, and then
Mm,
naturally my interest in philosophy grew from there. So I initially became very interested in yoga philosophy and what yoga and then it's what yoga explains about inner conflict and suffering, and I
mm,
became interested in Buddhism, and kind of what Buddhism says about pain and suffering and an inner conflict, and how we go about resolving that in this kind of kind of almost a structured or in a path. It sets out pathways and approaches to contemplate and work on. You do inner work within yourself.
absolutely. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so there were my initial steps, is to
Yeah.
become interested in faith-based philosophies, hope-based philosophies, philosophies that look at perhaps burnout or inner conflict disease in a different way than
Mm-hmm,
what we
mm-hmm,
do in the West.
mm,
And and exercising and moving the body and connecting with myself in a different way,
mm,
as opposed to say going to the gym or um, um, yeah. So yeah, that was the basis of how I started to work towards overcoming
mm,
that inner conflict. And I would
mm,
say that that
mm,
framework has over the years softened that feeling of burnout
mm-hmm,
over time.
mm,
And as I mentioned, I think there's a number of factors that contribute towards the feeling of burnout, and it's not just the workplace, it's
mm,
what
mm.
goes on around that.
Yeah, yeah, we're going to get into some of that in a moment. But before we do, I just want to help us understand a bit of your process. So number one, you kind of noticed that something wasn't right with yourself. You've used the word dis-ease, like DIS space ease rather than disease, which as soon as you said it, I went, oh, that's so right. Like if you keep the people that I've worked with and the people I go back to, and I try and track when they start to feel a sense of dis-ease, it's usually a couple of years before their, great big come to Jesus moment, if we're going to use faith-based philosophies today. And and they go, I wish I hadn't ignored that. I wish I hadn't ignored that. I wish I hadn't ignored that. Joe Muirhead right now goes, I wish I hadn't ignored that. And I think we get this sense of something's not right. And then you talk about this internal conflict, which is not necessarily a conflict within ourselves, but it's usually we are conflicted with the external environment. So quite often, I'm just going to call it what it is, that's working inside insurance companies or any type of system where someone else who is not a health professional is guiding the way we have to do our work. I often talk about that in my own work, going, great, your high school education is now limiting my, higher education degree, stopping this person from getting the treatment they need because you have a box you need to tick. Like, that level of conflict as well, going, why am I doing this? Why am I doing it in this way? Sometimes we find ourselves conflicted because the people who manage or support us, they have different KPIs to what we do. But I love the way you turned around and you said in this yoga class where you said, I found out what my ethics were. Because every allied health professional has a board of ethics or a code of conduct that they have to abide by. And I don't think any of us really take the time, number one, to learn what those are. But number two, are they meaningful for me? What are the ethical considerations for me? Like, I know, broadly speaking, as health professionals, we're not supposed to do harm, do no harm, do no harm. But, I could do no harm over here and not harm this person, but in not harming this person, these people might end up being really harmed. How do I navigate that conflict and what responsibility do I have in that? Can you talk a little bit about, I don't know if you've ever explored this, but what are some of your personal ethics that help you navigate the conflicts that we find ourselves on a day-to-day basis? Yeah, this wasn't in the questions I sent you, by the way, so good luck with that.
Do no harm is a central pillar of yoga philosophy. Like,
okay.
We will suffer less, the mind will be at more peace and will be at more harmony when we practice ahimsa, which is translated to non-violence.
Yeah.
Do no harm, whether that's in thought, whether that's in a way we project ourselves, and the way we act and do our work. If the goal and the aim is to do no harm to the insurer, i.e. overspending on their money, is that considered a non-harmful healthcare practice?
Right.
To deliver healthcare in a cost-efficient way that delivers functional recoveries in a timely way. Healthcare professionals or healthcare businesses that may. So as a rehab case manager or a consultant, my practice is embedded in doing no harm for stakeholders.
Yep.
How do I navigate that when it comes to working with treatment providers or healthcare providers who deliver treatment services? It's supporting them to govern themselves, supporting them to become accountable professionals, so that their healthcare practice and their delivery is not going to harm that person in front of them, the patient, the person, the injured worker, the claimant, whatever you want to call that in person. If a medical investigator, if a diagnostic, if a MRI scan is ordered, is it potentially going to do them harm?
Yes.
Is it potentially going to do them harm? Before I order this MRI scan, is it potentially going to do this harm? And does that healthcare professional are they aware and conscious that it could potentially do harm? Because there's research out there that routine scanning, for example,
Mm-hmm.
of a musculoskeletal condition as a kind of a scenario, unless there are no clinical red flags or kind of nothing sinister kind of being highlighted in the history taking, and fully well knowing that a report will come back with an array of array of medical terms which can be quite overwhelming and quite overpowering and cause quite a lot of inner conflict in that human being that's reading it. Is that harmful? So part of my part of my role, I feel, in the kind of personal injury rehab space, is to maybe suggest, is it appropriate to go down this route? Is it necessary to go down this route?
Oh no.
Actually, could we be more reassuring that something will get better naturally, so that we're facilitating a non-harmful recovery?
We need to stop. We've just had a dropout. So can you go back
That's
to?
okay.
Yep, I don't know where to take that back to. Okay, so you were starting to talk about facilitating the MRI and coming back to questioning whether that, like, where are the harmful practices in that? So let's go back to that, and Jen can work it out.
So I think as a rehab, what's important, or what I've embedded into my practice, or how do I mitigate potentially harmful healthcare practices, is by collaborating with treatment providers and orchestrating rehab and having certain narratives and discourses that mitigates potential harmful practices, or mitigates a pathway that could cause harm. So it's integrating that knowledge of evidence, integrating what I know about the fact, what factors I'm aware could cause harm, and supporting healthcare professionals in that way, to consider the decisions that they're making, but doing that in a very diplomatic and professional way. It's always the challenge, isn't it? It's always the challenge when you've got healthcare professionals that sit in one camp, and then healthcare professionals that sit in another camp, or you've got healthcare professionals who truly kind of contemplate and reflect on the next action that they're about to make, and healthcare professionals who simply do it because they're conditioned in that cycle of this person's got neck pain, I'm just going to, because MRIs are easy to order, and because they're easy to because they're undertaken in a timely day, potentially can be done in the same day, it's easier to go down that route. So I find it so non-violence is kind of the no harm is a central pillar to the work I do, and I think from that you have this knock-on effect, this knock-on effect of I guess just one simple action, or one simple way of being can have a ripple effect on the rest of the work.
Absolutely. Yeah, especially for those of us working in environments that can quite easily become adversarial. Not all treatment professionals are in that type of work environment, but I think it's really interesting. It's when we look at musculoskeletal, I'm going to use myself as an example now. I have had, so with cancer diagnosis, you get sent for tests all the time, and then you end up with the scan anxiety, right? I still get anxious about that. Every time I have to go and have another scan, there is this, oh my God, what are we going to find now? Because it's rare for me to go to a scan as a woman in her 50s, and they're going to find something, because this body has been on earth for 50 years. What I have had to do in terms of my own self-advocacy now is go, what are some of the things that you were expecting to find in a 50-year-old scan so that I'm not surprised? Like, or a scan of someone who's 50 years old. And I think having those conversations with our clients so that they can go, my leg hurts, but I didn't realize I had 5 levels of disc protrusion, which might not be contributing to their leg pain at all, right? Or they go, I've just found out I've got a tear in my hip, and they've never had a problem with their hip before, right? So again, it's I guess building this confidence in ourselves, not to get caught up in the steam train or the very fast moving vehicle of go get this scan done, then you will go and see the orthopedic surgeon, then we're going to do this, and then we're going to do that, and then we're going to do this, and then we're going to do that, and then all of a sudden you're going to be fine, you're going to go back to work, and then the client's going, I'm not fine. I'm not fine. Kaya's nodding his head a lot here, people who are listening. I think I don't know if I have ever thought about the whole do no harm in terms of that very specific practice.
Iatrogenic harm
Wow.
is a big conversation globally. Cause of medical negligence. Is it negligent to? It's a big question, big debate. But from experience, I've experienced so many people go on to live with chronic pain, disability, loss of work, worklessness, prolonged periods of absence from work, because at least a contributing factor was that a pathway was followed, or they were led into a pathway of healthcare that may contributed or attributed towards that harm, that ill health. And not every there's 8.5 billion people on this planet, and a very small percentage are medically trained and have no real understanding or awareness of, in a large proportion of humanity, have very little understanding of the workings of their body and the functionings of the body and what it's capable of in terms of healing and repair and recovery and rehabilitation. So naturally, a lot of people are vulnerable when they experience injury and or illness, and there's an element of vulnerability, and you put your entire trust into a system that I would like to think that if I was ill or injured or unwell, that I never have to go down. So I would hope that the people I confide in will help support me recover in the most natural way as possible, and have a discourse and narrative along the way that reassures me that everything's going to be fine, most likely. Most likely. And I appreciate that there are people who are living with medical conditions, terminal conditions, and I'm not here. I'm talking about cases and circumstances where that harm is completely preventable.
Absolutely. And I think conversely, going back to the scans and the diagnostic imaging that we also reliant on, there's harm we can create with that when it comes back as no abnormality detected. Yet you've got a person sitting in front of you who is distressed, and all their behavior suggests that there is something very real going on there. But then we get this evidence that says nothing wrong, must be in their head, they must be making it up. So,
or you get a report that that gives and alludes to a number of pathological features, when actually those pathological features in inverted speech mark, could genuinely just be normal time related changes, which
Yes.
sounds completely different to a herniated protruded disc at L4, 5, and 6, which is impinging on a nerve, which probably was asymptomatic before, or could have been asymptomatic before, as opposed to, time, normal anatomical changes, expected changes in a male who's 45 or 55 years old. And then the narrative that comes from that, what I would hope, what I feel should happen is that the discourse, and there's unity in how that person's prognosis will be, or could be like, and just being more positive in our language around our language with the people we work with and the information we're sharing. Generally having positivity and reassuring language.
Yeah. And Cleo is not talking about toxic positivity at all here. What he's trying to suggest, or what he is suggesting, is that we become very, very well acquainted with how things like diagnostic tests or other medical professionals are languaging things, and we get to see these clients who are, their vulnerability is heightened. They could be a lot more hypervigilant. Like I certainly became incredibly hypervigilant around health professionals. So what if we're going to use this ethic of do no harm? How are we going to interrupt that cycle for that client so that the client can actually start taking back some of their empowerment, some of their agency, and go, I'm a woman in my 50s. I'm going to see stuff on scans, right? Or I'm a woman in my 50s. Maybe it's time to go get my hormones checked. Just I'm being very simplistic here.
Mm-hmm.
So,
absolutely. And that scan then goes on to a specialist. And it depends what camp that specialist is sitting on, and their lived experience of supporting people who have a diagnostic report that's been reported in that way. What camp do you sit in? Do you sit in the camp where you've seen 1,000 people present with the same image kind of finding type, the features are, you've seen 1,000 people with similar features, and you've seen all 1,000 people recover completely, fully, without ever needing to be operated on? Or is your usual practice to recommend a surgical intervention, to explore, to see what you can do to fix the problem, which then possesses a number of other risks, which then ripples into other experience. We could go, and
yes.
and it's more about let's reassure people and give them the opportunity to let's just reassure people more. Let's just create less fear and anxiety, especially in those cases we know that could be prevented and preventable from a harm perspective long term.
And let us become confident in supporting clients to ask the questions that they need answers to, and not assume that we know what they're thinking.
Absolutely. I was recently speaking to a client, and I think 3 or 4 surgical procedures on the knee, arthroscopies, multiple over the 2-3 years. And another surgeon has recommended, this is just a kind of a scenario that I experienced. And the surgeon said, this is his kind of way of distilling his experience. He said, they would like to go in again. So I've got a third opinion, and they think that they can help. And I said to my client, I said, is this what you is this
Mm.
what you were hoping for? Is this the pathway
Mm.
you're hoping to go down, given the nature of the 3 other surgical procedures you had? And actually, given that you're showing me you're making progress here,
Mm.
what are you hoping? Like, what are you hoping for? You were, like you do have a choice, I said. And he said, I'm not sure. He said, but I don't have a choice. And I said, yes, you do.
Wow.
You have a choice. What is it you mean by you don't have
Yeah.
a choice? And I said, you absolutely have a choice. You can either see where you can go without having to go for a surgical procedure, or you could absolutely go for a surgical procedure, and after 6 months post surgery, you know better, or
Mm.
or and so yeah, there is a choice you can make. You can either, yeah, it also comes down to the individual's um values as well, and ethics around
Mm.
what healthcare is and should look like. And you know
Yeah.
that feeling of having something done to them
Hmm.
may sometimes make people feel better,
Hmm.
or 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 yeah, it could go the completely opposite
The
way. I
opposite way.
didn't
Mm.
help, and now
Mm.
what's the next solution, and then what's the next solution?
Mm.
So yeah, the ripple impact, the karmic seeds that are planted
Mm.
from potential healthcare decisions could go in any direction, couldn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the powerful part of this conversation, which we will get to very shortly, is helping us understand and explore some of that disquiet, that disease that comes up for us as health professionals, and how we navigate that. Because we're all looking for the simplest neural pathway because we're busy. The work we do is difficult. Let's just put it out there, people. The work we do, I know you all think it's common sense and easy, but the work we do is it. This is why you go to parties with friends and they go, oh my God, I could never do what you do.
True.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
Because you go, I couldn't do what you do. You're so noble. You're so wise. You're going, it's just common sense. No, the work we do is difficult. But we are always, our brains are wired in such a way that we're always looking for the simplest way to do something. And when we're overworked or feeling out of control, or we've got, kid demands or older parent demands, or we're about to lose our job, or is the NDIS going to even fund what we do anymore? Or is this insurance company going to get hacked by the next Russian cyber attack and we can't get paid for the next 6 weeks? Like when we've got all of that, because they're real life experiences for my listeners, Kara, right? Real life experiences.
Wow.
So, we're sitting there and we're just going, what's the easiest thing for me to do? Right. We know it's not even a conscious thought. It's like,
Mm.
I need to do no harm, which means I don't stick things in this client. I don't rush them out the door. I make sure that their next appointment is booked. I make sure that their medication is all up to date. I make sure they've got their tools. But do we check to see if they're practicing using their tools?
And even providing advice that I
Mm.
sometimes feel is hopefully going to do no harm.
Mm.
Like I often hear clients, I need surgery, or
Mm.
I need to, my surgeon says I need X, or this person has said I need Y. And
Mm.
even trying to challenge that in the most diplomatic and careful way can
Mm.
often be responded with hostility. So it's a
Yeah.
really challenging space to work in healthcare. And yeah, there's just so much conflict in different shapes and forms, and so many dynamics to deal with and play with,
Mm.
and to deliver a truly non-harmful healthcare service. It's the biggest challenge we're facing in,
I,
in
I
in this
love that
day
you've
and
said
age.
that.
It's the
Yeah.
biggest challenge we're facing. Like
Yeah.
we're 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 all here trying to support people to recover,
Mm.
reach their human potential,
Mm.
most cost effective, most natural ways possible. That's, I feel, should be the core of
Mm.
healthcare. cost efficient, but in the most natural way possible.
Mm.
And yeah, I think that will do no harm globally to stakeholders, funders. But we need an entire healthcare workforce that believes in a natural recovery, and that has a discourse and narrative around, the likelihood of people making full recoveries from conditions or healthcare issues that are completely recoverable from. So, and I think if we can help a cohort, that cohort of people, I think it'll alleviate a lot of stress on the system,
Oh, gosh,
financially.
yes. Yeah, and then I'm now curious, bringing this back to the topic of this podcast, which is about psychosocial demands of our work. Now, we haven't labeled them or listed them, but we are talking about them frequently. Like, this whole conversation has been about the psychosocial demands of our work as health professionals. So if you were looking for the list, so you could go and create your management checklist. Have I checked in about vicarious trauma? Have I checked in about slip, trips and falls? Have I checked in about road rage? Have I checked? Like, that's not what we're about here. And I think that's the complexity that managing or assessing for risk really presents us now, Claire. And I think you've opened up this conversation beautifully. So you've got team around you, you've got people that you refer to and people that you work with and people that you care for. What are some of those risks, the psychosocial risks that you're seeing in your colleagues? And I need a drink of water.
In my colleagues, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what I'm seeing in my colleagues. And there's perhaps a reason for that, which probably, won't go into, but what are the risks I'm seeing in terms of myself?
Yep, great.
As in, what am I experiencing that impacts my well-being? And are you saying,
do that. That's a great way.
What's
Yes.
causing inner conflict? What's causing that conflict? And I've expressed that I feel that the large proportion of the people I work with, I've worked with people who've been involved in major traumatic events and have sustained multiple traumatic injuries, multiple orthopedic injuries, multiple fractures. I forgot to mention that I have a rehab provider that I founded in the UK, and for the last 10 years, I've supported people who have been in intensive care unit for several months to return to work within 3-4 months, and seeing the speed of recovery that can be achieved and accomplished when everybody is working in unison. Every stakeholder, every healthcare provider, treatment provider is, working in unison towards a unified goal, and every party in that piece of that puzzle is aspirational and believes that people can make, the best possible recovery, providing we all work together and harmonize. And seeing that occurring, not seeing that occur in industry generally here, causes a lot of conflict. And then trying to apply what I know and what I've seen, and applying the practices that I've evolved and implemented over time to enable those outcomes, those results, those functional recoveries in a space that's so disjointed. And so, I'm already on a mission to try help people recover, make full recoveries, through lived experience and practices that I've adopted over time and implemented, working with people who've sustained far more severe injuries than what I'm seeing in this space here. So I'm talking polyorthopedic, people who've sustained,
Mm.
you know, multiple fractures head to toe.
Mm.
You know, you know, people who've sustained amputations as a result of road traffic collisions, brain injuries, go on to
Mm.
accomplish some great,
Mm.
great things, and consistently and routinely,
Mm.
because of been able to deliver rehab and healthcare in a way that the greater whole, the stakeholders value,
Mm.
in a different system. And so, but that inner conflict of, okay, I want my clients to experience rehab holistically.
Mm.
I want people to experience an integrated rehab healthcare, have an integrated healthcare experience. We don't just have to, and then the and then it's more around control. I think that's the biggest psychosocial risk factor is system or management or higher, the hierarchies,
Mm.
controlling your practice.
Mm.
That's,
Mm.
controlling your practice. Um, you know, you, you need to do X, Y, and Z, because that's what will move the file or the case forward.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily the best thing for the client. It's not necessarily the best interest of the client, but it might be in the best interests of a business, because by doing X, Y, and Z, it generates revenue.
Mm.
Or
Mm.
have you tried implementing this healthcare program?
Mm.
Just have you tried chucking it in? Or yeah, it's that controlling of that practice.
Mm.
And as healthcare professionals, we all practice in unique and individual ways, and
Nice.
we all
Nice.
know how to get to a result and an outcome in our own ways. We just simply need to be trusted. We simply we need people to have confidence in us. We
Mm.
don't and we need to be empowered to um, support people in our own unique ways.
That's
Uh,
really, really powerful. I'm going to
and
stop you there.
yeah,
Yeah. That's really powerful because if you think about that from owning a business, which you have done before, and you do now, but when we've got team members, I know one of the most empowering things I've done for my team members is to go to them and say, I trust you. I
absolutely.
trust you. If you can convince me that this is the best thing to do for the client, I will help you get it funded. Or I will help you work out a way to step away so that you don't have that conflict anymore. Because,
Mm,
because one of the biggest frustrations in our industry, and probably for anyone, is we go, I've assessed this client like you asked me to do. I'm using evidence-based best practice and lived experience, because it's all a part of evidence-based best practice, lived experience included. And I have now made these recommendations, given the and then they come back to you and go, awesome recommendations, do it in half the time and I'll give you a third of the money.
mm.
Right. And then we, as the health professionals who just want to help our clients, go, sure, I can do that. But we end up getting resentful and overburdened, and we have to take on more clients to meet our financial obligations or our KPIs, or to keep our bosses happy to help them meet their KPIs. And then all of a sudden we wonder why we feel like garbage, and we're conflicted, and we're all trying to relocate to Bali so we can become life coaches and cryptocurrency traders. Now, I say, and I'm glad you're laughing, and I use that one a lot because I go to Bali a lot and I see it, and I'm like, oh, you used to be an OT and now you're trying to eke out a living trading crypto. I've met these people. I've met them in traffic jams. That's how I know they're there. So I
Yep.
think, that's a really powerful and quite a simple way for clinicians on the ground to kind of go, where am I feeling conflicted in this work? And then, but Kayo's nodding at me again. That's really cool. And then for team leaders to go, where am I noticing this conflict? What are people talking to me about conflict here. And I think if we started to approach the psychosocial demands in terms of this word conflict and inner dis-ease, we are going to be well on the way to creating a stabilized workforce,
absolutely,
an empowered workforce, a workforce that actually wants to do the work. And dare I say it, AI can't do this bit.
No, absolutely not.
Dun, dun, dun.
And that's the ongoing conflict I experience is being told what to do, how to do it, when to do it.
Yeah, I think we all do.
And healthcare doesn't work that way.
No, it does not.
Healthcare doesn't work that way. Rehab management doesn't work that way. It's a big challenge in this space. But I've also experienced people who give me the freedom, stakeholders who give me the freedom, or and so yeah, it's an interesting conversation, the psychosocial demand. It's a very complex subject. I think we in the healthcare space need to trust our people's more, the people who work within our organizations, who work for us, our team members more. We're all in healthcare for a reason. You can't deliver services, healthcare services, rehab services. You can't standardize healthcare as such. You can't standardize rehab management as such. There are things we can do to standardize measuring success. There's things we can standardize to measure efficiencies, but you can't create an entire workforce into robots.
No.
KPIs, for example. Well, it's a big conversation and a big subject that I can get quite emotional about. It's really important that we're not trying to create workforces or rehab consultants or case managers that are robots who get X, Y, Z done in a certain time frame, or write reports or request funding in a cyclical way, in the same way for each each client that we work with. We need to ensure we're not recommending the same types of supports for each client. Every client is unique and has their own values and has their own needs and has their own interests. And it's ensuring that we mold to that. Just ensuring that you're giving your workforce the confidence and to go out and just get results. And you can't get results every single time. You can't get
nice.
You can't.
Nice. Thank you.
You can't.
Wow.
You can't the positive closure and the negative closure. It's just not a metric to really measure your workforce's success against. I think there's a lot of work to be done in that respect.
Yeah, great conversation. This has gone on. We could obviously talk about this a lot, and I think it's a conversation that does need to be opened up. But coming back to the beginning of the conversation, I just want to remind everybody, go check in with your own personal ethics. I want everybody who listens to this podcast, and you can come have the conversation with us in the Future Proofing Health Professionals Facebook group. Come and have the conversation. Where are you working out that some of your ethics have been compromised? Not because it's in your board of ethics or your code of ethics, but it's like, ethically to me, this feels uncomfortable, right? Ethically to me, this feels uncomfortable, which means that's self-inquiry. And if we are going to be health professionals who can meet the demands of the future needs of our client base, we are going to have to take seriously this self-inquiry, because we are the people delivering it. We can't systematize out the human experience.
Absolutely not.
Right. That's what KO was trying to explain earlier. We can't create systems that negate the human experience for both the person needing services, but also the person delivering services. Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
For the person delivering services, it's called your clinical reasoning. And I'm not trying to be snarky, but I think, we get so scared that if I don't say what they want me to say, I'm not going to get funding and the client's going to be left with nothing, and I can't have the client left with nothing. I think we need to grow up. I was going to say something very crude then. We need to put on our big girl pants, big boy pants, and or non-binary pants if you've got those, and go, hey, hang on a minute. You asked me for a professional opinion. I am giving you a professional opinion that is backed up by evidence, that is backed up. I'm sorry you don't like it, but for me to get the outcome and to help the client in the way you want them helped, i.e. not needing services anymore, you're going to have to pay for these things. And I think once we can adopt a posture that allows us to grow in our confidence of those conversations, we might not be having as many conversations about lack of talent in our workforce, burnt out health professionals, and we might actually start seeing people heal.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you. So you write amazing things on LinkedIn. That's how we connected, by the way. So I want to encourage everybody now to open up the LinkedIn app that they've probably got dormant on their phone. Go find Kayur. It's KAYUR, KOTECHA. Go find him, or find me and then just scroll through my contacts and you'll find him. And watch what he writes about. Get involved, get engaged, because these are thought-provoking discussions, which is why we've connected so well.
We have indeed, Jo. And one of my biggest vulnerabilities is to have discussions like this. And it's something I find challenging. It's sharing your truth and sharing your experiences and sharing the way you want to change the world is a real challenge, and a real without being judged or without being fearful of how it will impact you, your personal brand, your livelihood, your career, and your business. And I use my LinkedIn and words to express the chaotic mind sometimes, all the thoughts and the emotions and all that inner conflict I have about the day-to-day experiences. And sometimes using words just helps in a different way to communicate the messages, and highly encourage healthcare professionals to utilize platforms like LinkedIn to just share the story and share what little changes they are embedding in their healthcare practices, what little things they're doing to evolve and transcend the status quo. And it's an exciting place to work. Healthcare is an exciting space to work in, and I can't wait to see the evolution of what happens in the personal injury space. I can't wait to see can't wait to see how stakeholders evolve. I can't wait to see how healthcare professionals and treatment providers and evolve. I can't wait to see it being a more seamless process. I can't wait to see the majority of people who find themselves rehabilitating as a result of a personal injury. Can't wait to see. I can't wait to see more people have an enhanced rehab experience. And yeah, it's a great space to be in, and a great journey to be a part of. And within those challenges and experiences, within the adversities we experience within the system, those challenges give me the purpose to drive change, to drive evolution in my own little way. And I encourage others to step out or come out of their shelves, and because there's plenty of us out here who want to support people like that.
Yeah, we do. And we want to, I love the way you say, like, you've just taken us from a place of, could have been despairing, but hey, we have the same philosophy here, is if we don't drive change will not occur.
Absolutely. I read a quote once. I don't know who it was by. It might have been an unknown. The system will never change. We are the system.
Yes.
We are the change.
Yeah. Nice.
And that's resonated with me. When I mean the system, it's just the day-to-day operation of the capitalistic world. But there are people within these worlds that genuinely are working towards progressing things. And I'm seeing progress. I'm seeing that I'm seeing that in myself, seeing that in my clients, seeing that in the people I work with and collaborate with and partner with and connected with, that there is a community out there. And just reaching out is all you need to do, and don't feel you don't have a voice.
Nice.
Because that's through LinkedIn I have connected with so many people who don't feel that they have a voice. And it's really important to connect with people who feel that way, because they're the game changers.
Yes. They are the game changers. Yep.
They're the game changers. They just need someone to put their hand around and say, I'll support you. I'll back everything you're going to say, because we're having these conversations behind closed doors, and I agree with that. Now it's just putting it into a realm where the masses can read it, see it, believe it. So yeah.
Great. Wow. I really encourage everybody to just be thoughtful. Don't race off to your next thing after this podcast. After you've listened or watched this episode today, just take some time to let it settle, and things will come up for you. Good things will come up for you, but it will also guide you to know what you individually and personally need to do next. So before I close out this conversation, when we get to meet each other in real life and we're going to go to a cafe, what am I ordering for you?
That will depend on how I'm feeling on the day.
Okay, so if it was today.
I am unfortunately a bit of a coffee fiend.
Oh, you are my person. You are my person.
I am. I love a good coffee. I also love a green tea. I also love an Indian chai. So I would say surprise me, Joe. Take your pick. I'm not fussy. And I'm not fussy about the milk either.
Oh, namaste. That's a yes. My coffee questions have gone from what type of coffee right through to coffee, milk sizes. Yeah, it's great. Hey, thank you so much for being so generous with your time and your thoughtfulness today.
Thank
I
you.
am
Thank
looking
you.
forward to pursuing these conversations greater. So
Absolutely. And hope this conversation doesn't get me castrized.
no, it really won't. I think what you and I will find will happen, and I'm going to leave this in the podcast because I know, is that
Chest.
we will find others who will go, I want to learn to do that. I agree with you. How do I know this? Because you've given me confidence to start posting on LinkedIn in a way I never would have 2 or 3 years ago.
I meant chastise, not castrize.
All right, I think we're done. Her obviously needs a double shot macchiato right now. Thank you so much for your time today. I look forward to introducing to you to our next guest on the next episode of the Entrepreneurial Clinician podcast.
Brilliant, Joe. Thank you.